Welcome to the Advisor's Edge, the podcast for financial advisors who are RIAs or thinking about becoming an RIA. Our mission here is to help give you some insight, educate, and hopefully inspire you to do the good work that you do. Today is going to be fun. We have all back office with us, Julien Mordecai. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we have Chuck with us today too.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So
looking forward.
Julien. Yeah. Thank you. Julien, all back office. I think you have been working for many years with RIAs, helping support them. And I think the name, you could say it says it all. But let's first hear, what is all back office? How do you help advisors?
Sure. So all back office, it's actually also front office now, but it really is a business that I created to try to fill gaps in typical boutique practice needs. So most advisors obviously have the practitioner part down. If they're managing money, then they certainly know how to manage money. And when they decide to set up an RIA, then they learn that they don't get to make pies all day long. They have to actually run a business, right? And so a lot of what we do is all about the workflows and the support operationally and also technology wise that aren't really typically core in terms of the expertise of the professionals in the office, right? And so they then have choices. They can, as they set up their RIA and as it matures, they might hire full-time staff to do the operational work. They might even have expertise in the software that they're going to implement, the vendors that they're going to select and integrate with. But often there's gaps in that broad sort of range of needs. And so we really started out focusing on portfolio accounting and billing, making sure that if advisors were doing aggregation of held away assets or dealing with alternative investments, all of the work around that to be able to deliver correct fees and accurate performance reports, that's where we started out in 2009. And then now we've evolved the business to where we have a pretty strong, robust front office support solution, which really can be thought about as everything related to client support from the initial implementation where we're going to do the account papering and set up all of the data inside of an advisor's CRM, maybe populate all the details inside of a financial plan, might assist some in the population of the details for risk analysis, and then right on into the portfolio accounting and billing and maybe in all the way into helping to support the configuration of a model inside of a trade order management software. So it can be fairly broad, but it's often the nitty gritty work that a typical advisor might not consider their favorite work.
So, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because usually the fun part's sitting in front of the client, helping them solve their problems, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Love this concept. And pardon me, we're seeing a lot more of this type of thing. As a matter of fact, I just had a good conversation. Julien, I think you came out of Schwab. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. I assume you know or may know Julien Lopez over there?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I actually just had a chat with him last week, in fact, and they're talking about the same kind of thing. And what I absolutely love, and there's many things I love about the RIA space, but what I really love is that there's so many ways to go RIA, right?
Right.
And there's so many partners out there. And for folks that are still on the fence about going RIA, holy smoke, there is just no reason to be. When I started thinking about it, which was probably a decade ago, there was not nearly the level of support out there and choice to be able to go RIA. You can build your own with resources like yours, which I'm eager to get into a little bit more. And I've got a few questions. You could tuck in. There's so many other ways to do it.
Right.
And what I like to say, if someone's looking to go the wirehouse route, they got like 5 choices. They want to go IBD now that Commonwealth and LPL, so maybe you have 11 choices, not 12 anymore. But holy smoke, if you want to go RIA, there's so many different flavors out there. And did that kind of drive your decision to set this up?
It's absolutely. And I think what we were trying to do was help with a portion of that continuum. So if you think about sort of on the one end, an advisor could do everything themselves and start a boutique, or maybe it's a partnership, a group that's coming out of a wirehouse and they've already got all of the components of a pretty complete financial services package in a boutique, and they're going to do it all themselves, and they got a business manager, and that person knows how they're going to run and build that enterprise, all the way over to the other end of that spectrum that might be, look, I know what I want to do, but I don't want to build my own RIA, but I want to move into a fiduciary role. And so that advisor might bolt on, or maybe that advisor is going to build a financial planning practice, but outsource the asset management. And what we were trying to do was get in that range where you're still controlling most of what you want to do. You've got the majority of the autonomy side that most advisors have already experienced being inside of a world where they're a captive and they're a representative of a big corporation, and they go out on their own because they want to be able to fulfill a need that they see specifically that they want to solve for. And so for us, it's the analogy I use is you've been part of a cruise ship. You've been one of the many stewards on a cruise ship, and you've taken care of your clients with an amazing solution set. But now you're going to set up your own little yachting service where you're going to take people on custom trips. And the problem is, of course, now you're the cook, you're the baker, you're making the drinks on top, and then you're also navigating and making sure that the engine's running. And so we want to give that advisor that still has more of a desire to run things mostly themselves, a set of services that make it easier for them to stay independent. At some point, you might find that it's well worth it to go in and find partners or find a partner that's going to manage money, and you can really lean on that expertise. Or maybe you want to manage the money and you build a sort of a network of several advisors that do financial planning, and they have different areas of expertise. Maybe one's a strong estate planner and another is more on the trust side of things. And so, but we're in that. I definitely was trying to come in and give advisors the ability to stay almost 100% autonomous and run their own boutiques. And so if you said, what's your ideal client? It's typically going to be, say, under $1 billion and wanting to really customize the way that they do business with their clients and need a company that's a do-it-your-way partner. So we're not going to come and say, hey, let us fix everything with this suite of technology tools and you go our way. My staff actually know how to use various portfolio accounting systems. So some of the well-known ones, Orion and Advison and Black Diamond and Tamarack and Adapar. I'm trying to think if I leave anybody else out. Panoramics is another good one. And then on down the line. What's that?
I stay on top of this stuff pretty good. I haven't come across Panoramics yet.
It's a really good boutique. Yeah, it's a really good, tight, focused solution for a traditional RIA managing equities, mutual funds, bonds, but not maybe getting into the sort of the heavy alternatives and that kind of thing. Not that they're bad at it, but yeah. And so we're doing it your way in your environment. So you're going to set us up with an email at your shop, and we're going to work just like one of your employees would under your policies. We're going to document, usually is the first thing we end up doing, because most practices are not ready to train somebody, right? I mean, even a 2 or 3 or 4 advisor shop nobody's got the hat of, I'm going to train Joe or Susie who's going to come in and do all this work. So we do that, and we have a sort of a self-installation or self-training model when we come into a RIA.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love that you're setting up so you're flexible and you can help out whoever, so they can be independent and essentially move that to the next step and do whatever needs to be done. But it's a unique individual that says, hey, I want to do what some might say is the most boring, tedious part of building a business.
Not me, by the way.
No,
I'm the weird one in my company. I can tell you that right now. I'm the outlier.
The second most boring.
Okay. What's the most boring then?
Compliance.
Oh, well, okay. All right.
Obviously.
Fair enough. Well, it's that's a good point.
When we were standing up Sovereign, do you know how I ended up not having to be the chief compliance officer at Sovereign?
No, tell us the story real quick, and then we'll get back to Mordecai.
I was the first one to go, not it.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah.
And since you're the boss, you could do
that. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Either
I am not it
or I quit. Yeah.
That's right. Well, Mordecai, tell me, I'm just really curious why. I mean, for personally, it takes a unique individual that says, hey, I really like to make sure we get really good process and support that business function really well. I mean, you work with Schwab, you probably got a lot of experience with different advisors around the country just from that
Right.
work. But what really drove you to that?
Yeah. Well, the real inspiration is one of my early mentors. His name's Surrey Roberts, and he was a doctor in Vietnam and began to have degenerative. I've forgotten the name of it, but he basically was losing eyesight and hearing in his 20s, and
Wow.
he started to recognize it and realized that I can still be an entrepreneur, but I'm not going to be able to be a doctor. And so when I met him, he was in his 40s and 50s, and I was, well, my family knew him, and I was in college, and he had a group of assistants that were all college kids, and it was about three of them or four of them, and I did it for a while. And so we would drive him, we would answer all his emails, help with his bookkeeping, and he had a bunch of stuff going all the time, investments in offices. He had a whole mountain retreat that he owned up in the mountains of North Carolina, and all these things going on. And I realized, okay, well, that's amazing that he can operate with what he can do, which is communicate. And he was a fantastic promoter of it. Everybody around him, he could just infuse you with energy and tell you that you could do anything. And so he's really my original inspiration. And then I worked in my early years for Performance Technologies that created the Portfolio Center software that now is owned by Tamarack. It was a division of Schwab. We were a wholly owned subsidiary of Schwab. And I ended up managing the sales team and helping to grow it. And one of the things we were dealing with was all the tech support calls that were coming in. And we basically were talking about, why is this happening? We had a consulting company that came in. Why is it? It was the 80-20 rule. And what's the deal with these practices that are creating all of the work for us, right? And there was two main things that came out of that research. One was they weren't really using this software very well. So it'd sort of be like if you bought a set of golf clubs and every time that you went to use them, you would actually say, well, I need a pro to help me get going. And so you'd call the pro because it's been so long that since you have even played. Others would actually just set those in the corner. I mean, we literally had clients where they would call us and say, well, I need to get this installed. And of course, it was up on the shelf. Back then it was DOS days. So there was actually a box. And the other was really the sort of failed implementation and failed use of the technology. So that was usually due to two reasons. Advisors themselves weren't great at using the technology, or the staff that they assigned the job to weren't great at using the technology, and they weren't very good at holding them accountable to using the technology. And so that's basically what caused me to want to start this particular solution, is I felt like advisors know what they want to do. They're great on their feet with their clients. They know what they almost everybody who comes and leaves the world that they were in before to build their own RIA is very motivated to take care of their clients. And then you realize all the things that maybe you're not good at. Mm-hmm. And so running software is pretty typically not the strength of a good practitioner. Many are A-type and they do a good job. But for a lot of folks, that is something they don't enjoy. So going back to what you said, Chuck, it's just not one of those things that people want to do. And it'd be the first thing that a lot of advisors would say, not it. I'm not running this. I'm not setting up the software and making sure that we do our billing and reporting correctly. And so that was really the motivation, was just recognizing that for some, it was just such a struggle and so painful to just get through a billing cycle. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's a giant liability. And to sort of address your point, Chad, the people that want to do this work love doing it. It's like a video game for them. So your staff, and if you've had them that love doing the bookkeeping in a practice or generating the reports or taking care of end clients' paperwork and really getting it right, it's like a game for them. And I'm definitely the outlier, because if you give me a set of those steps to follow, I'll inevitably, miss something or forget something or put it off mostly. So
I've got a specific question. You mentioned, was it Portfolio Center?
Yep.
Is that the same as iRebal? Is it completely different? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, no, Portfolio Center is a legacy application that was desktop based. Oh, okay. And it is, it is still used by some advisors. It's still supported by Tamarack.
I see. Okay.
And then Tamarack acquired the company that had been a wholly owned subsidiary from Schwab. and because they had built an overlay to Portfolio Center. So the Tamarack platform is really an interesting solution. It has a web application that's running that advisors experience when you're using Tamarack. When you sign on to Tamarack, behind the scenes, the application that's doing some of the data processing to get the data into Tamarack is Portfolio Center. So they're still leaning on that infrastructure. It's a little bit like DOS inside of Windows.
Yeah.
And then iRebal was an independent company that ended up getting purchased by TD Ameritrade many years ago. And so when the merger occurred between TD,
yes, that's right.
and Schwab,
Yes. Yeah.
they took on the iRebal. And so you get iRebal now if you work with Schwab, but you don't get Portfolio Center as an advisor affiliated or clearing through Schwab.
Right.
Yeah, it's not part of the offering, but iRebal is.
Got it. So iRebal, that's interesting. And as Chad knows, sometimes I have some very specific questions, and if that's okay.
Love it.
With iRebal, because we custody with Schwab and RayJ and Interactive Brokers, but Schwab for sure. Could we use iRebal for all of our custodians, or is it just locked into just using it as Schwab? Do you happen to know that?
Yeah, I think the efficiency of it is when you are when you custody all your assets with Schwab.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there's some other solutions that are a better fit when you've got multiple custodians.
Yeah, I mean, we currently use Orion and Eclipse for that, but I'm always curious of what other options are. So it sounds like you guys are completely agnostic, right? So really, you're acting as really consultants to help these advisors, and do you help them through the process? Like, here's the pros and cons of Tamarack versus Black Diamond versus Orion. Help them choose, and then once they choose, you help them deploy. Is that basically the model?
Yes. So, and I appreciate you noticing that. So we are very intentional about being agnostic. We started out as a sort of a one-trick pony supporting Portfolio Center, and recognizing really that there was a need there. We had really solid growth in that area. But what I really wanted to do was align with advisors. And as a fiduciary, the biggest value you bring is the ability to provide advice that's not conflicted. And so we really want to do that too. One of the neat things of being agnostic is that since we work in all these systems, we have opinions that are fact-based and, well, anecdotally based, of course, but we're running all of these systems and we have preferences. And when somebody has a question about what should I use, it's not just my opinion and my reading or Kitsis or surveys. It's also the fact that my staff will say, man, it's so much better to try to get this work done inside of this system or that system. And so that's great to be able to speak from that kind of authority, as opposed to maybe being biased for another reason, obviously being that we've got partners and companies that are great partners, but we try to wear that fiduciary hat ourselves. So,
let's throw some people under the bus here. So who do you like and who do you not like? Let's go.
Well, okay. You guys will appreciate that, right?
We'll bleep all this out.
You'll appreciate this because, of course, you would have a similar answer if someone asked you about asset management and so many companies out there in the fund world or financial services world. It's really about fit. There are some absolute trends that are occurring, right? So what we know is that if you think about maybe CRM that everybody uses, I think one way to think about sort of the vendor network or the vendor world in the RIA space is that there's best of breed strategies where this is what we were all used to for many years. We really, I think we could all appreciate that. And we know that the risk of having an all-in-one provider is that you kind of find yourself, it'd be like if you manage money and you only used American funds, right? And back in the day, that was pretty typical. I don't think we see that very much in the RIA space. You have the whole world of funds to choose from. And so best of breed strategies were the norm. And what we've seen more recently is sort of an aggregation of technologies. So Morningstar did it. And
until they didn't,
until they've divested themselves.
Right up until they stopped.
Right. So I think that's a pretty good example of a trend and a strategy that maybe could have worked, where you're going to get the benefit of all these systems that are going to integrate.
Right.
And they really tried to do it. And what's funny is I was working with Morningstar, and some of the early efforts to try to add solutions to their stack all the way back into the 90s. So they were one of the first. Orion has built a bunch of stuff organically, but they've added some solutions, and they merged with Brinker, so they added an asset management arm to their technology stack. We see Tamarack as a very good example where they had aggregation platform that they've divested themselves of, but they've got the Portfolio Center and Money Guide Pro, two of the very best well-known technologies, and then their own Tamarack solution for trading and also the reporting platform. And then you see Advizon that has come sort of out of nowhere, and I would say has the strongest momentum right now. And it's also one of our staff's favorites just because it's really easy to use. So it's got a CRM, portfolio accounting, and trading as kind of the core pieces. And the CRM and portfolio accounting integration is the sort of the biggest strength. And then it also has an end client portal. So this is all on the tech side. When it comes to sort of other vendors that we recommend compliance wise, or maybe IT, we will typically, with a boutique client base, I like to recommend boutique providers, mostly because it's valuable to be able to call the owner of a company and the trust is there. And usually a boutique practice under $1 billion doesn't have so much complexity. I mean, you certainly will have a growing enterprise that's going to be buying other RIAs, or maybe it's a multifamily office strategy that's going to get pretty complex. But for the most part, these firms are going to be managing money primarily. They're doing financial planning. Their client base is $1 to $5 million of investable assets. And for them, it's great to be able to recommend boutique consultants rather than the big, well-known compliance platforms or IT platforms. That's the direction I tend to go. So even though we recognize some really good large vendors, I try to find boutique partners to recommend.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just curious. So when you're looking at, if you were to think about the experience your team is having with advisors, what's the most consistent question or concern that you get as far as the key problems you're seeing in the industry that they're dealing with right now to overcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would say on the matters that we have the real ability to solve for, it's going to be nailing down the billing and the reporting, which we've done all along, and then client onboarding and client response. A one-person shop has to be able to take a vacation, right?
Yeah.
2 or 3 partners still might not have anybody. And certainly, I mean, I should address this. Where and when this has changed. Yeah, I should definitely go to this. So it's also the fact that they have a labor problem, right? Do I manage a person, or do I use an outsource? Right. So that's actually one of the core questions we're the solution to. And if we go back to that, there's a history that's evolved. If we go back to the DOS days when I was selling portfolio accounting software, $100 million to $200 million RIA had to have at least 2 staff, maybe 3. In order to get the work done. And it was all about labor. They weren't paying as much back then because of inflation, but even as a percentage of assets, it was still a relatively lower number. And then obviously technology has created so much leverage that it's very normal for me. I just helped an advisor. He's transitioning his business, but he was managing about 120 million and he had no staff. And really, we were the only other key resource for him, doing the billing and reporting for him. And that's with 120 million. And he just was sort of an A-type that could do everything. But so it's now possible to manage, let's say we've got a $500 million RIA that was 2 partners. It's becoming 1. And we're their admin for everything that they need. 70 something clients, right? That is a nifty practice. Wouldn't most advisors would be like that? That's what I want, right? I've got my client base. The revenue is terrific, and it's 1 advisor and an assistant. And it's not.
You want to hear the biggest outlier I've ever seen in that space? And this blew my mind this guy has since sold his practice, but it blew my mind. A couple of years ago, I was chatting with him. 1 advisor, 700 million in AUM, 1 part-time support staff.
Right.
And you think usually when we run into teams like that, you've got maybe a couple of clients that are 50, 100 million or something like that. No, he did not have any of those large. They were all 10 to 15 million AUM. And
That's
so he had
amazing.
like 150 clients and he was doing it all. Crazy outlier. So
Right.
sometimes just knowing
Yeah.
it's possible
It's possible. That's right.
is important to know,
That's right.
which is fascinating. So thank you for.
Yeah, I think that might have been a roundabout answer to your question, Chuck, or Chad, is probably the underlying main one is how do I solve these problems without having to actually hire a full-time employee and have to manage a full-time employee? We all, I think, appreciate a contract relationship where you know what we're going to do for you. And generally speaking, we know that you're going to pay us and how much you're going to pay us to do it. And if we're sick or have personal challenges, they're always meaningful. I think all of us have relationships that matter, but it's not as critical because I'm going to provide redundancy for you. There'll be a second person that can take care of the work if something goes wrong. So it's not your problem or your monkey, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So if I can go back just for a moment on the idea of best in breed versus all in one, because I think that's a really important discussion to have when it comes to putting together your tech stack. And I think putting together your tech stack is probably one of the biggest decisions someone first going RI needs to make.
Right.
And I say that as someone who made a real big mistake with his tech stack when I went RIA 6 years ago.
Okay.
And the only thing worse than setting up a tech stack is having to set one up, tear it down, and set up a second one.
Right.
If you could avoid that, you can. So here's my point on this, and I'd like to get your take on it. Is part of your exploration with someone looking to go RIA when you're kind of guiding them through the different vendors and best in breed, like you want your account management from here, your balancer from here, your portal from there, right? Best of breed,
Right.
financial planning system from there, because you got some systems now where you can get all in one shop.
That's right. That's right.
What I have found is this: if you're more of a lifestyle practice and you intend to stay a lifestyle practice, I think the all-in-one starts making a lot of sense, right? But if you're looking to build more of an enterprise and you're going to have multiple advisors and so on and so forth, which is of course the route that we took at Sovereign, all-in-one just doesn't work, right? And I think the CRM is probably the best way to look at this. And we're at Orion Shop, so we like them for account management. We like their trading platform. But Redtail is fantastic if you're a 1 or 2 person shop, but there's no way that scales to what we've done at Sovereign. You just can't possibly do that. It's got to be built on a Salesforce. How do you advise clients to think about that? And what do you say as far as their future proofing of their tech stack?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's mind blowing how many vendors there are in the market. And I think one of the reasons that there are so many is that we haven't had a major correction in the economy. I mean, or really in the markets, right? So when that comes, you're going to see some vendors go by the wayside. And so it is really important to get it right. And then you have this, if you've ever seen Kit, probably folks, you guys are familiar with Kitsis's tech map. Well,
Sure.
My understanding, if I recall from Joel Bruckenstein, was that there's about 800 vendors to the RIA market when you include compliance and tech and others. And so that's a whole nother layer of due diligence that a typical advisor would have to do on a regular basis, right? It's a massive amount of time and energy that goes into that for most advisors. You're all reading industry pubs, you're all reading things, articles, and you're trying to figure out which of these systems I use. So yes, when you start out a practice, there are definitely some rules of thumb to go by. And one of the questions I ask, probably as you would when you're talking about a colleague, is what do you want to do? Are you going to build a boutique where you don't have to manage a lot of variables in terms of people and staffing? Or are you more of a business manager and you're going to go you're going to do something big and it's going to be an enterprise and it's going to take, everything is all that much more weighty when you make a decision to invest in a vendor. So we've built a little utility. We call it a vendor portfolio analysis. And when we bring on a new RIA as a client, one of the steps we take is to go through, it's kind of like going through your expenses, right? And how often do you actually analyze deliberately the vendors that you're paying for whether that investment is a keeper, right? If you think about it as a portfolio, just like an investment portfolio, some of those vendors are ready to be sold. There's no more upside to them. And you're even, or maybe even suffering a bit from that vendor. And it becomes part of your goals for this year is we're going to remove this one and move to another one. So it's definitely a core expertise for us. And we do that research all the time. And of course, we love it because we're always looking for what's a new up and coming better solution. And then we have to sort of balance that with what actually works, what really works, and what companies have stood the test of time and have market share and are dependable, and the revenue model is in good shape and the ownership is logical and you don't have a major conflict of interest with ownership. Sometimes you have a fund company come in and buy a vendor and it's like, well, what do you think they're going to do with it? So yeah, we do a lot of work on that front for sure. Your example is a really good one. I think if you think about the big four, so Orion, Morningstar would have been one of them, Tamarack, and then Advison as kind of platforms, right? All-in-one platforms. There is some success right now with the Advison, mostly because of that combination of the two. And they are just so innovative that what's happening is they're turning out solutions. So if you looked at them 5 years ago, they're nothing like what they are now. If you look at them 2 years ago, they probably have solved some problems that might not have been a fit for an enterprise that now really are. And then Orion has just been so solid in terms of the solution set that they've been trying to solve for. And then Tamarack, I think, lost their way a little bit with the loss of their leader about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's also such a reliable solution set between Money Guide Pro, those two together. Their CRM isn't a strength, right? So you wouldn't use the built-in CRM as they haven't invested in it, solved for it well enough. So yeah, you'd have to have another solution, maybe like a Salesforce, right? Is that what you use now?
We do use Salesforce, and we do a lot on Salesforce that's highly customized.
Yeah.
But if you're a sole practitioner, there's no way you could do that. And more importantly, there's no way you should do that, right?
You're probably not even using a CRM other than for your recruiting.
That's right.
For the most part.
So with Salesforce, we could build all kinds of workflows and we integrate. It's pretty cool what you're able to do. Like I happen to like that kind of stuff. But one thing I was going to mention too, and I think you would agree with this, is the importance of integration, right? Because that is going to be, in my opinion, one of the best ways to future-proof your tech stack.
Right.
I did an interview a while back with Eric Clark, right before he handed over the reins to Natalie. And we were joking around where I like to call API, and I love acronyms, as Chad will tell you.
Right.
And for me, API stands for my context, always, please integrate. And
Right.
as long as you can integrate, you can solve a lot of your future-proofing problems. And I would suggest anyone that's putting together their tech stack, even if you're not big now, with this industry growing the way it is, you might be inadvertently big in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
It just could happen.
Yeah.
And while an all-in-one is easier and probably the right thing for the smaller advisor group or solo advisor for sure, almost certainly,
Right.
make sure that whatever they have can integrate. So to your point, with Tamaracks, with their CRM not being the best, that might be okay today. But if
Right.
that advisor grows, they want to make sure that we can, or they can integrate the good stuff that they really like, perhaps with another CRM. So integration is so critical, and open architecture, all that good stuff. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I will just comment that when I started this company, I had really strong feelings about a best fit / best of breed build out for a stack. And it was mostly witnessing the fact that vendors come and go. So if you're dependent on one vendor for multiple elements of the practice, and for whatever reason, something terrible happens, it's just the same. You invest and manage for risk for a living, right? And both of you actually on the insurance side, right? So you're always looking for the risk in that. And so I would have forever pretty much said, don't trust an all-in-one. But the trade-off is what you're talking about, which is the integration. If the market had, and it's not like there's any brain to the market, but if sort of the trends of the market were such that everything was independent, then integration would be table stakes. Like everybody would have to integrate. What you've seen though is when these companies buy up a suite, then their incentive to integrate goes away.
Right.
And so the problem of integration is that you pretty much have these, you're starting to see sort of walls built around certain tech stacks when they're all owned by the same provider or the same company, or those partnerships are so deep. And it's creating problems because the best of breed solution set depends on that integration being optimized. And when you're really cheering on your vendor and or calling them and submitting your feedback on phone calls to say, why in the world aren't these talking to, you might not know it, but there's some politics going on. There's strategy going on between these two companies, and they're blocking each other. You can look at it even in the aggregation world with Chase and Fidelity right now, protecting really the access to client data.
Sure.
And when advisors who were making a pretty good living out of an aggregate wealth management policy where you're going to, or even sort of like a multifamily office scenario where you need insight and access to all of these custodian platforms, and Vile Accounts was trying to aggregate that data. They can't get to the data that they used to be able to get to now.
Yeah.
And so it's the same issue. So it's a fascinating challenge. And the only other thing I'll sort of end with is I have somewhat, to some degree, capitulated to sort of accepting the fact that Tamarack, Orion, and Advison have had a measure of success with an integrated platform, and that advisors are choosing it even with the risk of having all your eggs in one basket because of the convenience and the efficiency of the integration that you're looking for. Sorry, that's a long answer to that one.
I think it's a good answer, but I think all three of those companies are large enough where there's probably not a whole lot of real risk that they're going to go away. But of course, you never know.
That's right.
Do you want to talk about data lakes a little bit, data warehouses? Because that is kind of an integration panacea, albeit a big lift.
Gosh, it's like the Holy Grail, and we've been trying to chase it for a long time. My opinions or thoughts on it are that you could think about it as one would be, there's only one set of data, and everybody would just
yours.
Tap into it. It's yours as an individual investor, right? Would be the actual ideal world. I mean, and you think about like this thing and all of the apps that basically have, I mean, in a way, this is you could think about it as kind of my data is in this phone, and then all these apps have access to it. The problem is, of course, all these apps actually have your data everywhere. So really, like, we have a fundamental problem in the world, which is there's so much of your data not where it should be anymore. So the data lake idea, lots of companies were thinking, well, let's create the one location where all of the data will be, and then we can give everybody access to that. But they weren't even thinking about it as the individual investors' data, right? It's all of them are thinking it's our data and all these financial services. I learned recently from Rob Dearman, who's a close associate of mine with 724 Capital, and I were talking about this, and I was saying, why isn't there a lockdown on the end client, in the individual's data? And apparently it comes down to the way that the SEC and FINRA view the data owned by these custodians. So that's actually also their data. So when you work with them, it is their data too. And so you can't, so there's actually going to have to be laws that are adjusted and rewritten if we ever get to that point where there would be actually one set of data for each individual. And then, there's a bunch of companies out there with kind of the data lake idea that, hey, built, like, I think one of them, I think it's called, I'm going to get the name wrong, but their idea is whenever you build a software application, come to us and build it in our tech infrastructure, sort of like,
Oleg's place.
Sort of like Apple, right, has done.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but
Oleg,
I want to make
it right. Yep.
Oleg,
I was trying to remember the name of his company. Sorry. Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
Interesting. But I want to look at the one thing that you said. Interesting is this structural thing with the way the SEC and FINRA look at it, that the custodials essentially own the data.
Yeah.
The key data of the individual. Is that right?
I wish I could reference the sort of the clauses, but part of the reason that they're required to lock data down is that it's theirs. So that's two-factor, and all the pressure on security has to do with the fact that they're owning that data, and they're going to be liable for the fact that it gets out.
Yeah. So who has the liability is an important point of that. So that's an interesting point. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit, and we're going to pivot because holy cow, this time has gone very fast for us.
Okay.
But real
Yeah, there's
quick,
a lot
Chuck,
of
you may
babbling
have
on my
had like
part.
a really important question you want to ask before we wrap. Is there another?
No, the big crescendo for me was the data lake thing. And I think that is the ultimate way to future proof, but it's a huge lift.
Yeah.
Those are my final words on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Very
it's
cool.
been a pleasure to talk with both of you, and I hope that my hope is really that advisors, if anything, I would say my mission and my interest is in seeing this market grow. I think the RIA model is a better model. I know that there's lots of value in the traditional FINRA and other financial services entities, but the RIA model, I think, serves a particular purpose. And for most individual investors, the value and the outcome and the trust from it is better. And so I'm hoping that we continue to see the trend of advisors and professionals going into the independent RIA business, and that we see young entrepreneurs who want to have their own business, build it their way. And we're here really to service those guys. And once you get to the enterprise phase, we have a purpose too. We do some specialty work for larger RIAs, but I love helping entrepreneurs that are in the sort of first half of their careers. And then of course, if they decide to be a boutique, we love that too. So
All right. A little preaching to the choir to close us out here, Chad. I love it.
Absolutely. It's preaching to the choir, but this is, and that's hey, we're wrapping close here, but no, this is preaching to the choir. And I think, Julien, that is absolutely with Chuck and Go RIA, the work he's doing, certainly this podcast, it all kind of, we want to be helping those advisors do the great work that they do.
Yep.
And so it's phenomenal. Thank you for your time today, and have a great weekend. And we'll have to have you back sometime.
You
But
too,
I
Chad.
really
I'm glad you
appreciate
guys
it.
are doing this. That was fun. I always enjoy hearing what everybody else is up to as well.
Yeah, I think we could go for another hour, but we'll do it again another time.
Sounds good. Y'all
All
have
right,
a great
you guys have a
weekend.
great day. We'll see you.
Okay.